Hey Mary, this is a response to your Unit 2 discussion post. Okay, so I'm looking through your Unit 2 discussion post, and I think you did all right. I do think you kind of misunderstood what was being asked of you, if I were to be completely honest. Um, the overall assignment, the overall gist of the question was to design a survey to collect data on topics of your choice. And then it asks you to be sure to address these points. What is the purpose of your study? What is the goal? What is the research question or hypothesis being tested? Are there any operational definitions required? Develop at least 10 questions relevant to the problem, so forth and so on. I think you took these things a little bit out of order here. You say you were asked to design a survey. Well, the idea on this question was that you design a 10-question survey, develop at least 10 questions relevant to the problem. You design a 10-question survey that looks into this topic that you are looking into, or that you're interested in. So you started with a 5-question survey, and I'm going to just address some of these issues as we go through. Um, you started with a 5-question survey, and then you go down to 10 relevant questions, or 10 questions relevant to the problem. Let me talk about the 5-question survey you started off with. Um, so, in a Likert scale situation, which is what you attempted to set up here, strongly agree, agree, disagree, strongly agree, or disagree. You've got some typos throughout this whole project. You've got some grammar, punctuation, spelling, word choice issues. But as you go through here, you would want at the beginning of a survey to let your respondents know that they will be agreeing or disagreeing with the following statements. Okay, and then just make the statements. Your question is, has social media become a worldwide distraction? The answer to this is not agree or disagree, it's yes or no. Um, Now, you could ask, you could just simply say, social media has become a worldwide distraction. And then you would say, I strongly agree, I agree, I am sort of ambivalent, neither here nor there, disagree, and then strongly disagree. That would be the proper way of setting up a Likert scale. In that case, it would be a 5-point Likert scale, with a 5 being maybe strongly agree, a 4 being agree, 3 being a neutral response. I don't really know how to answer this. 2 being disagree, and then 1 being strongly disagree. That's a 5-point Likert scale response. But you don't ask questions, you make statements in this case. Do you feel as though social media is affecting grades negatively? Then you say strongly agree, agree, disagree, strongly agree. Again, do you feel as though social media is affecting grades negatively? Yes or no? That's the question, or that's the way to answer this. Now, it may seem silly, but this is something that could create confusion in the minds of the person reading this. If you just said social media is affecting grades negatively, strongly agree to strongly disagree, that's a statement, and that word choice works. Okay. Now, if you have hypotheses that support maybe even more definitive statements, like social media, like let me see um, how negatively is social media affecting grades, and then you may go like a 0 to 7 or something like that. So at that point, you're presuming that social media has that negative effect, and then you're asking people to rate how negative they think that effect is. Um, Now, the problem is at that point you're very specific here. You are presuming that it would be a negative effect. You would need to make sure that you have data to support this. Now, if it's a situation where maybe the research has shown this is the case, but maybe public perception is not that, and you're trying to gauge public perception, that would work in that situation. Okay, let's run through a different problem. Okay, so you say the purpose of the study is to determine if social media is the primary reason that students' grades are dropping. The goal is to prove again is a very difficult word, to investigate, to explore, to look into, various things. It's very hard in a single study to prove anything. I would say it's probably impossible to prove anything within a study, because, again, replication needs to generally occur. Goes to prove that social media is indeed the reason that grades are poor and that students' concentration are lost. My hypothesis states if students limit their social media use, their grades will improve because they will be more focused. Okay, so you're not necessarily going to use a survey if that is in fact your hypothesis. You're going to use an experiment. An experiment would be perfect for this. So you have a control group that maybe does not use any social media at all during the experimental period, and then you have maybe at least one, maybe two different experimental conditions where you have a certain amount of social media use that's experienced. So Group A is your control, no social media use. Group B is moderate social media use. Group C is heavy social media use. They're expected to interact with social media, every other hour or something like that. And then over time, you would see how grades are affected by this. That's an experiment to look into your hypothesis here. Surveys don't really do that. At least they would not be a good method for what you're looking into. Now, if you are trying to see, for example, how much a particular age group uses social media, or you're maybe looking for a correlation between high-performing students and low social media use, well, at that point, that would work. Let's find a group of students with very, very high GPAs and see, do they self-report as using social media significantly less than those with lower GPAs? That would work here. But you have to understand how these hypotheses and the techniques work together. Hopefully this makes sense. The 10 questions you ask, again, they're not really connected with the survey that you are preparing. I think you kind of misunderstood what was going on there. And then at the end, it's essentially anecdotal evidence, but again, it's a very small scale study that you're working with. Here's the final takeaway on this. Please make sure that you think about how things work together. Am I asking the right questions? Am I giving the right responses? Response answers. Is my method congruent with what I'm hoping to look into? Okay, you have to look into that. And finally, please, please, please proofread everything. I cannot stress that enough. That is very, very important. You've got quite a few spelling, grammar, punctuation issues all the way through this, and it does take away from your arguments. So please make sure you do that in the future. As always, if you have questions, come and see me.